wind had been restless all evening, sweeping through the fields like it was trying to warn the land of something it couldn't say out loud. And old Farmer Briggs sat on his porch listening to the creaking boards of his barn groaning under the weight of the approaching night. That barn had stood for almost 80 years, older than Briggs himself. And not once in his life had he ever seen it behave strangely. But just as the sun slipped behind the far hills and the shadows thickened across the property, the heavy wooden barn door shuddered, then slowly began to open on its own. No wind was strong enough to move that door. Briggs knew that. Everybody in Willow Creek knew that. The hinges were rusted stiff, the wood swollen and warped with age. Yet there it was, yawning open like a mouth inviting something in. Briggs froze, pipe halfway to his lips, watching the door drag itself across the dirt with a hollow scraping that echoed across the empty fields. Rusty, his old hound, lifted his head from the porch and stared at the barn too, ears pinned flat in a way Briggs hadn't seen since the night they chased off that strange, two-tall silhouette by the creek last winter. Rusty let out a low, trembling growl, the kind that starts in the ribs, not the throat, and when Briggs stood and said, "Come on, boy," the dog didn't move. His paws dug into the boards, nails scraping wood, body shaking. Rusty wasn't just scared, he was refusing. Briggs muttered something about coyotes, even though he knew coyotes couldn't open barn doors, and grabbed his lantern before heading across the yard. But with every step he took, Rusty stayed planted on the porch, whining in a way Briggs had never heard, a sound that made his skin crawl as if something cold had brushed along his spine. When Briggs reached the barn, the door was open wide enough for a person to slip through sideways. Though Briggs couldn't think of a single fool, living or dead, who'd he want to? The air around the barn felt wrong, heavier somehow, colder, as if the night wasn't allowed in, but something else was already waiting inside. Briggs held up his lantern, and its warm glow pushed only a few feet into the darkness before vanishing like it had been swallowed whole. "Hello?" Briggs called, his voice cracking. The barn didn't echo back. Instead, the silence that followed felt thick, pressing against him, smothering the space around his ears until he could hear nothing but the uneven thud of his own heartbeat. He stepped forward, boots sinking slightly into the old hay, and instantly smelled something metallic, like wet iron mixed with damp soil. Rusty's barking exploded behind him, sharp and frantic, echoing off the fields. Briggs turned, expecting to see the dog running toward him, but Rusty wasn't moving. He was standing at the very edge of the porch, refusing to step 1 inch closer, barking fiercely but frozen by something stronger than fear. Briggs tried calling him again, but Rusty barked harder, not at Briggs, but at something behind Briggs. Something inside the barn. Slowly, with dread crawling up his spine, Briggs lifted his lantern and turned. In that moment, the air inside the barn shifted, a soft exhale, like something had been holding its breath in the dark. The light revealed the faintest outline of a figure deep in the back corner. A silhouette hunched low, almost folded into itself. Briggs squinted. The figure twitched, too fast for something human, jerking its head upward with a sharp snap that made Briggs nearly drop the lantern. For the briefest second, he saw its eyes glint, not with reflection, but with their own faint light like coals burning cold blue. Briggs stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a rake, and the figure shifted again, unfolding limbs that were far too long for the shape of its body. It crawled forward without sound, its joints bending wrong, its shadow stretching across the barn floor like a stain. Rusty's barking became panicked howls, the kind that meant run, run now. Don't look back, but Briggs was frozen, breath shallow, legs trembling, lantern shaking so violently its flames swirled and dimmed. Then the creature stopped, completely. It tilted its head toward Briggs, studying him with those unnatural eyes. And then, in a voice dry and cracked like old wood breaking, it whispered, not through the air, but directly into Briggs' mind. "You left the door open." The barn door slammed shut behind him with a thunderous boom. Briggs dropped the lantern, plunging the barn into darkness, and the creature moved, fast, skittering sideways, its limbs scraping against the wood like claws dragging across bone. Briggs blindly shoved himself toward the door, slamming into it with his shoulder, pushing with every ounce of strength left in his old body. Outside, Rusty was scratching desperately at the other side, whining, barking, crying for Briggs to get out. With one final shove, the door burst open and Briggs stumbled into the night, collapsing into the dirt as Rusty ran to him, circling him, nudging him, hurting him away from the barn like it was on fire. Briggs didn't look back. He couldn't, because as he crawled away, chest heaving, the barn door slowly creaked open again, this time without wind, without reason, without anything human behind it, and Briggs swore he saw two blue eyes watching him from the darkness, unblinking, waiting for the next time he dared step inside.